Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, not what people say about you, not what your past tells you, but the truth buried deep inside, the potential that's waiting, silently, for you to notice it? What am I really capable of? Most people never do. They live their entire lives trapped inside limits they never chose, limits built by family expectations, social labels, failures, and fears. They wake up, go through the motions, and call it life. But deep down, they know there's something more, something bigger, something untouched inside them that's dying to be awakened. The Stoics believed that every human being carries within them a seed of greatness, a part of us that's rational, divine, and capable of extraordinary things. But that seed can't grow unless you cultivate it. You can't realize your potential until you remove everything that's been hiding it. The lies, the addictions, the fear of judgment, the noise of the world. So in this episode, we're going to uncover 8 timeless principles that will help you break through those limits. You'll learn how to stop letting others define you, how to uncover your real passions, how to turn weaknesses into strengths, and how to connect with something infinite and eternal within yourself. Because your potential isn't something you randomly discover. It's something you unlock, something you build, something you rise into the moment you stop pretending to be smaller than you truly are. Before we start, just do one quick thing. Drop a like and share this episode if it connects with you, and make sure you subscribe. Let's begin. 1. Don't let others define you. One of the biggest reasons people never reach their true potential is simple. They let other people decide who they are. It starts early. Maybe someone told you you're not smart, or not talented, or not capable of more. Maybe your family pushed you down a certain path because it's safe or expected. Maybe a teacher, a boss, or even a friend made you feel small. And without noticing, you slowly accepted their words as your identity. But here's the truth. People don't define you. Their opinions are nothing more than mirrors of their own fears, limits, and experiences. Most of the time, people talk from their insecurities, not your reality. And if you let that shape your life, you'll live a story that was never yours to begin with. The Stoics warned us about this trap. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. What people say about you is not the danger. The danger is letting their words enter your mind and plant themselves as beliefs." Once you adopt someone else's definition of you, you start shrinking to fit their version of you. And the more you shrink, the more disconnected you become from your actual potential. Think about how many people live their whole lives under a label someone else gave them. You're too sensitive. You're too shy. You're not leadership material. You'll never make it in that field. They accept these labels like tattoos they can't erase. But labels are only powerful when you wear them willingly. The moment you take them off, they lose all control over you. People project their limits onto you because it's easier than facing their own. When someone can't imagine themselves succeeding, they'll often assume you can't either. When someone gave up on their dreams, they'll tell you yours are unrealistic. When someone feels small, they'll try to shrink you too, because your growth threatens their comfort. But your potential is not measured by the size of someone else's imagination. It's measured by the size of your own willingness to grow. Here's something most people forget. Nobody knows you better than you know yourself. No one has lived your experiences, your pain, your dreams, your inner battles. People only see fragments of you, a moment, a mistake, a version of you from years ago. They don't see your evolution, your effort, or the fire inside you that refuses to die. So why should they define your limits? Realizing your potential starts with reclaiming your identity from everyone who ever tried to shape it. It's about looking at yourself honestly and asking, who am I really? What do I want? Not them, not society, not my past. What do I want? And once you ask that question, the next step is crucial. Stop explaining yourself. Stop seeking permission. Stop waiting for approval. When you constantly look outside yourself for validation, you hand your life to people who don't have to live with the consequences of your choices. They get to judge your risks, but you are the one who has to deal with the results. That's why the only voice that matters when it comes to your potential is your own. But let's be real, breaking free from others' expectations isn't easy. You might disappoint people, you might face criticism, you might even lose relationships built on the version of you that played small. But consider this. Is it worth living a life that feels safe to others, but suffocating to you? You weren't made to fit someone else's script. You were made to write your own. And once you stop letting others define you, something powerful happens. You begin to expand. You take risks you once avoided. You explore passions you once hid. You grow into spaces you once thought were off limits. And every step you take toward your true self unlocks another layer of your potential. So here's the challenge. Listen to people, but don't obey them. Hear their opinions, but don't surrender to them. Respect their voices, but protect your identity. Because the moment you stop letting others define you, your real journey begins. The journey toward the person you were always meant to become. That's the first truth. You can never reach your potential while living under someone else's definition of you. Break free from that, and you'll finally have the space to grow into your fullest, strongest, truest self. 2. Understand your passions. If you want to realize your true potential, you have to start by understanding what truly lights you up from the inside. Not what pays the most, not what impresses people, not what your family thinks is practical. I'm talking about the things that make your soul come alive, the passions that pull you forward even when no one is watching. Most people never explore their passions because life pushes them into survival mode. They grow up following the expectations of others, working jobs they don't love, living routines that drain them, not because they're incapable of more, but because they never took the time to ask themselves a simple question. What actually matters to me? The Stoics were clear about this. If you don't know your nature, your inner drive, then you can't live a life that feels meaningful. Marcus Aurelius said, "A man's true delight is to do the things he was made for." But how can you know what you were made for if you never explore your passions? Here's the truth. Passions are clues. They're signals from your deeper self, showing you where your potential is hiding. When you feel drawn to something, music, writing, teaching, building, problem-solving, helping people, that desire comes from somewhere real. It's not random. It's not silly. It's not a coincidence. It's the universe, or your nature, or your subconscious whispering, "Pay attention. There is something here." But understanding your passions requires honesty. It requires silence. It requires separating your true desires from the noise around you. You have to ask yourself questions like, what makes me forget about time? What energizes me instead of draining me? What would I still do even if no one praised me for it? What did I love as a child before the world told me who I should be? The answers to these questions often reveal the real direction of your potential. But many people ignore these signals because they're afraid. Afraid to want something big. Afraid to admit that their passion doesn't match the path they're currently on. Afraid that others will judge them. Afraid they'll fail. But here's the reality. Denying your passion doesn't protect you, it slowly kills you. It keeps you stuck in a life that looks fine from the outside, but feels empty on the inside. And passion doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It's not always loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet pull toward a hobby, an idea, a dream, a curiosity that keeps tapping you on the shoulder. If you ignore it long enough, you start to feel numb. But if you follow it, even slowly, even imperfectly, you start to wake up again. Passion is not about talent. Talent grows from passion, not the other way around. People don't become great at something because they were born perfect. They become great because they loved it enough to stay with it, even through the boring, painful, difficult parts. And passion isn't always one thing. It evolves with you. Who you were at 15 isn't who you are at 30. The things that mattered to you a decade ago might not matter now, and that's okay. What matters is that you stay connected to the part of you that's curious, alive, and willing to explore. Understanding your passions also means understanding what drains you. Your potential doesn't grow in places that deaden your spirit. If something constantly makes you feel small, stuck, or miserable, that's a sign too. Your energy is a compass. Pay attention to where it rises and where it dies. But here's the deeper truth. Your passion is not just for fun. It's a doorway. It's the starting point for your purpose. When you understand what you love, truly love, you begin to discover what you're capable of. Passion builds discipline. Passion builds resilience. Passion builds identity. When you care deeply about something, you naturally invest in it, improve at it, and begin to see possibilities you couldn't see before. That's why understanding your passions is not optional. It's foundational. You can't build a meaningful life on someone else's passions. You can't realize your potential by following a path that doesn't belong to you. So take the time to sit with yourself. Observe your desires. Notice your excitement. Follow the small sparks until they lead you to the flame. Because your potential isn't found in the expectations of others. It's found in the things that make you come alive. That's the second truth. If you want to realize your true potential, you must understand your passions. They're not random, they're the map, and once you follow them, your path begins to open. 3. Focus on who you want to be. If you want to realize your true potential, you have to shift your focus from where you are to who you want to become. Because here's the truth. Your current life is just a reflection of your current identity. Your habits, your choices, your routines, your fears, they are all tied to the person you believe yourself to be right now. But your potential lives in the future version of you, the one you haven't stepped into yet. Most people never reach that version because they stay stuck in the identity built by their past. They say things like, "That's just who I am," or "I've always been this way," as if their personality is carved in stone. But the Stoics taught the opposite. They believed that a human being is always becoming, always changing, always capable of rising above their previous selves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could be good today, but instead you choose tomorrow." In other words, you can choose a new identity any moment you decide. Here's the mistake many people make. They try to change their life without changing their identity. They want to get healthier, but still see themselves as someone who hates exercise. They want to be more disciplined, but still believe they're naturally lazy. They want to be confident, but still carry the story of someone who hides. That's why change doesn't last. Because if your identity stays the same, your actions always snap back to match it. But when you focus on who you want to be, When you see that future version clearly, your actions begin to shift naturally. Identity is a magnet. If you create a strong enough picture of the person you want to become, your mind starts working to close the gap between who you are and who you're becoming. So ask yourself, who is the future me? What do they look like? How do they think? How do they speak? What habits do they live by? What standards do they refuse to break? Get specific. Do they wake up early? Do they eat clean? Do they train consistently? Do they have boundaries? Do they speak with confidence? Do they show up to their responsibilities instead of escaping them? Once you define that person, your job is simple. Align your actions with that identity, not perfectly, but consistently. Every time you act like the future you cast a vote for becoming them. And the more votes you cast, the more your identity shifts. This is how real growth works. You don't become confident and then take confident actions. You take confident actions, and confidence grows. You don't become disciplined and then act disciplined. You act disciplined, and discipline becomes your nature. Identity follows action, not the other way around. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus told his students not to chase outside results, but to focus on the character they were building. Because once you build the right character, the results take care of themselves. You don't chase success. You attract it by becoming the kind of person who naturally produces success. This is why focusing on who you want to be is so powerful. It gives direction to your effort. It stops you from wasting energy trying to fix the past and shifts your energy toward building the future. Instead of saying, "I don't want to be like this anymore," you start saying, "I'm becoming the kind of person who..." And that shift in language changes everything. But here's the truth. The future version of you won't appear on their own. You have to build them. You have to practice being them. You have to make choices today that your future self will thank you for. And sometimes that means doing things that feel uncomfortable now, but empowering later. Growth always demands discomfort. So here's the challenge. Stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "Who do I want to become?" Because once you know who you want to be, the right actions become obvious. They're not forced. They flow logically from the identity you're stepping into. That's the third truth. If you want to unlock your potential, focus on who you want to be, not who you've been. Create that vision. Hold it. Act on it. And day by day, your life will rise to match the person you choose to become. 4. Give up your addictions. If you want to realize your true potential, you have to face a hard truth. You can't rise while your addictions are pulling you down. And addiction doesn't just mean drugs or alcohol. Addiction is anything you use to escape yourself. Anything that pulls you away from your power, numbs your mind, or steals your time. For some people, it's scrolling endlessly on their phone. For others, it's junk food, gossip, laziness, or toxic people. For many, it's comfort. An addiction so subtle it feels harmless, but it destroys more potential than anything else. Addiction is anything you keep going back to, even though you know it's making you weaker. And the truth is, you can't build a powerful life on top of weak habits. The Stoics were clear about this. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Addiction takes that freedom away. It makes you controlled by impulses instead of intention. It replaces discipline with cravings. And the saddest part? Most people don't even realize they're addicted because their addictions are socially accepted. We call it entertainment, relaxing, escaping stress, or taking a break, when in reality it's avoidance. Addictions keep you distracted from your potential. They keep you numb so you never have to face your fears. They keep you busy so you don't confront your emptiness. They keep you entertained so you never sit with yourself long enough to hear what your soul is trying to tell you. Addiction is the enemy of transformation because it robs you of the two things you need most: clarity and control. Here's the scary part. Your addictions don't just waste your time, they shape your identity. If you constantly escape, your subconscious learns that you're someone who runs from discomfort. If you constantly avoid responsibility, your mind starts believing you're incapable. If you constantly reach for comfort, your body loses the ability to endure challenge. And before you know it, your addictions are not just habits, they're who you are. That's why giving them up isn't just about quitting something. It's about reclaiming yourself. When you let go of addictions, you create space. Space for clarity, space for passion, space for discipline, space for growth. You start hearing yourself again. You begin to feel your own strength. And for the first time, you realize how much potential was being drowned out by distractions. But let's be honest, breaking addictions is not easy. It requires more than motivation. It requires identity shift. The moment you tell yourself, "I'm giving this up," your mind will try to negotiate, rationalize, or hold on to it. Addiction always fights back because it knows it's losing control. But this fight is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of transformation. It means you're finally waking up. The Stoics believed in facing discomfort. They saw struggle as a forge, heat that strengthens the soul. When you give up something that's controlling you, you step into that forge willingly. You feel the withdrawal, the emptiness, the resistance, and you choose not to run. That choice alone builds more strength than years of empty comfort. The key is to replace your addictions, not just remove them. Remove mindless scrolling, replace it with learning. Remove junk food, replace it with nourishment. Remove toxic people, replace them with solitude or stronger connections. Remove avoidance, replace it with intentional action. You can't just delete habits, you have to upgrade them. And remember this, your addictions survived because they served a purpose. They gave you pleasure, escape, or distraction. To break them, you must give yourself something deeper: purpose, direction, meaning. Because a person living with purpose doesn't need to numb themselves. A person moving toward their potential doesn't have time for addiction. So ask yourself right now, what is holding me back? What habit or escape am I using to avoid becoming who I know I can be? Be honest, brutally honest. Because the moment you identify your addiction, you take the first step toward freedom. That's the fourth truth. You cannot rise into your true potential while being chained by the things that keep you small. Give up your addictions, not because it's easy, but because your future self deserves a life built on strength, not escape. 5. Be honest about your capabilities. If you want to realize your true potential, you have to develop one of the rarest strengths a person can have: radical honesty with yourself. Not the kind of honesty where you admit mistakes because someone caught you. Not the kind where you say what sounds good. I'm talking about the honesty that happens in silence, when you're alone with your thoughts and there's nowhere to hide. Most people lie to themselves every day. They lie about what they can handle. They lie about what they're willing to do. They lie about their weaknesses, their excuses, their fears. And the worst part? They don't even notice it. These lies become a shield against discomfort, a way to avoid facing the truth, that they could be so much more if they were willing to confront who they are right now. The Stoics were ruthless about this. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, stop pretending, stop protecting your ego, stop acting like you're already the person you wish to be. Growth begins when you step out of illusion and into truth. Being honest about your capabilities doesn't mean putting yourself down. It means evaluating yourself clearly. What are my real strengths? What skills am I lacking? What habits are slowing me down? What fears are controlling me? What excuses am I hiding behind? Most people avoid these questions because the answers are uncomfortable. It's easier to say, "I could do it if I really wanted," than to admit, "I don't have the discipline yet." It's easier to say, "I'm not getting opportunities," than to admit, "I'm not prepared for the opportunities I want." It's easier to say, "Life is unfair," than to admit, "I'm not putting in the work." But here's the truth. Potential grows in honesty, not denial. When you're honest about your actual capabilities, you stop living in a fantasy version of yourself and start building the real one. You stop expecting results you didn't earn. You stop demanding rewards from efforts you never made. You start seeing your life for what it is, a project you are responsible for shaping. Some people fear honesty because they think it will make them feel small, but the opposite happens. Honesty gives you direction. You can't improve a weakness you refuse to see. You can't strengthen a skill you pretend you already have. You can't grow from a place of delusion. But when you face the truth, really face it, you unlock the ability to change. This kind of honesty also frees you from comparison. When you know your capabilities, you don't need to compete with anyone else. You're not playing their game, you're playing yours. Someone else's strength doesn't threaten you because your journey is about improving your last version, not beating someone else's story. And here's the important part. Honesty is not static. Your capabilities will evolve. What you struggle with today can become your strength tomorrow if you face it with intention. Think about any skill you've ever mastered. At one point you were terrible at it, but you improved because you admitted you needed to learn, and you allowed yourself to grow. The Stoics believed in accepting reality, not to surrender, but to transform. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If a thing is possible, it is already done." In other words, if improvement is within your reach, the only thing holding you back is your willingness to face the truth. So here's your challenge. Every few months, sit down and give yourself a personal inventory. Not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. Write down what you're good at. Write down what you're bad at. Write down where you're failing. Write down what scares you, because clarity is power, and honesty is the doorway to clarity. That's the fifth truth. To realize your true potential, you must be brutally honest about your capabilities, not to shame yourself, but to free yourself. Because once you see yourself clearly, you can finally start building the person you were meant to be. 6. Make strengths from your weaknesses. One of the biggest misunderstandings people have about potential is believing it comes from what you're already good at. They think greatness is born from natural talent, natural confidence, natural intelligence. But the truth is far more interesting and far more empowering. Your potential doesn't come from your strengths, it comes from your weaknesses. Because your weaknesses are the raw materials that can be transformed into something powerful if you're willing to face them. Most people run from their weaknesses. They hide them, avoid them, pretend they don't exist, or blame them on something outside of themselves. They say, "I'm just not confident, I'm not disciplined, I'm not creative, I'm not good with people." And because they label themselves that way, they never improve. Their weakness stays a weakness because they never give themselves a chance to turn it into anything else. But here's the truth. Every strength you admire in someone else was once a weakness they decided to confront. Discipline starts as inconsistency. Confidence starts as fear. Wisdom starts as mistakes. Strength begins at the exact point where you feel weakest. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed your obstacles, your flaws, your limitations, your challenges were not roadblocks, but training grounds. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That means your weakness isn't a wall, it's the door. And if you push through it, it becomes your greatest source of strength. Think about the people you respect most, the ones with leadership, courage, clarity, or resilience. They didn't become that way by avoiding discomfort. They became that way because they faced parts of themselves that were messy, painful, or embarrassing. And instead of running, they rebuilt themselves around those exact areas. If you're shy, learning to speak up can make you more powerful than someone who was confident from the beginning. If you're undisciplined, building routines will make you stronger than someone who never struggled with structure. If you're afraid of failure, learning to take small risks will make you braver than someone who never doubted themselves. Weaknesses are opportunities in disguise. They reveal exactly where your growth is waiting. But transforming weaknesses into strengths requires honesty and patience. First, you have to admit where you're falling short, without shame, without excuses, without pretending it's just who you are. Then, you take small, simple actions that push you slightly beyond your comfort zone. If your weakness is fear, your strength will come from courage built one uncomfortable decision at a time. If your weakness is procrastination, your strength will come from completing small tasks you used to avoid. If your weakness is insecurity, your strength will come from doing things even when you doubt yourself. You don't need to flip a switch. You only need to make small moves consistently until the identity shifts. The real magic happens when you stop seeing weakness as a flaw and start seeing it as potential energy, something that hasn't been activated yet. That's when growth becomes exciting. That's when life becomes a challenge you're willing to face, instead of a burden you're trying to escape. And that's when your potential finally begins to reveal itself. Here's the truth most people never hear. The parts of you that feel the most broken, the most behind, the most not enough, those are the exact places where your greatest strengths can be built. Not in spite of your weakness, but because of it. When you turn your weaknesses into strengths, something powerful happens. Your confidence becomes real. Not fake confidence, not loud confidence, not borrowed confidence, but the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you faced yourself and won. That's the kind of strength no one can take away from you. So here's your challenge. Look at the areas you avoid. Look at the habits you want to ignore. Look at the fears you try to hide. Those aren't signs you're incapable. They're signs you're standing at the doorway of your greatest growth. Step through it. Transform it. Rewrite the story. That's the sixth truth. Your weaknesses are not the end of your potential. They are the beginning. And when you turn them into strengths, you become unstoppable. 7. Find a connection to the infinite. If you want to realize your true potential, you have to connect yourself to something bigger than your everyday struggles, bigger than your fears, bigger than your temporary emotions. Because the truth is, the human spirit is wired for something infinite, and when you lose that connection, when you get stuck only in the small problems of the day, you forget how powerful you really are. Most people live in a tiny world. They only see bills, deadlines, drama, stress, disappointments, and whatever is happening right in front of them. They never lift their eyes. They never step back. They never remember that they are part of something vast, something eternal, something far beyond the noise of daily life. And because of that, they feel small. They feel lost. They feel disconnected from themselves. The Stoics talked about this constantly. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning and every night to look up, to remember the stars, the universe, the divine order behind all things. He believed that if you understand your place in the larger whole, your life becomes clearer, your problems shrink, and your purpose becomes stronger. When you're connected to something infinite, you stop living like a tiny, afraid version of yourself. But what does connection to the infinite actually mean? It doesn't have to be religious. It doesn't have to be spiritual in a traditional way. It simply means recognizing that your life is part of a bigger story, that your actions matter, not just for today, but for who you become, that your existence has depth and meaning beyond survival and routine, that there is a deeper intelligence, a deeper order, or a deeper purpose running through your life, even when you can't see it clearly. This connection can look different for everyone. For some, it's nature, the mountains, the ocean, the night sky reminding you of how vast and alive the universe is. For others, it's creativity, music, writing, building, expressing something that didn't exist before. For some, it's service, helping others, giving, contributing, stepping outside your own concerns. For others, it's stillness, meditation, silence, prayer, reflection. Whatever form it takes, the purpose is the same: to pull you out of your smallness and into your true scale. When you connect to the infinite, three powerful things happen. First, your problems shrink, not because they disappear, but because you stop giving them more power than they deserve. When you remember you're part of something bigger, your stress, your fears, your insecurities, they stop feeling like the whole world. They become manageable. They become pieces of a much larger journey, not the entire story. Second, your purpose grows. When you see your life as part of something infinite, you stop wasting it on meaningless distractions. You stop acting like you have forever to do the things you were meant to do. You start showing up with intention. You start realizing that your time, your energy, your potential, they matter. Third, your strength increases. Because when you feel connected to something greater than yourself, you're no longer running on your own power. You're plugged into something deeper. The fear of failure becomes smaller. The fear of judgment becomes lighter. You move through life with more courage, more clarity, more resilience. Losing connection to the infinite is why so many people feel empty. They live only for the next paycheck, the next notification, the next distraction. And because their world is small, their potential becomes small. But the moment you reconnect, even for a few minutes a day, you remember who you are. You remember your power. You remember that you're not here just to survive. You're here to grow, to create, to rise, to evolve. So how do you build this connection? Start with silence. Start with stillness. Start by stepping outside your mind's chaos and asking yourself, what am I part of? Look at the sky. Sit with your breath. Reflect on your existence. Let yourself feel small, not in a weak way, but in a sacred way. Because once you understand how vast life is, you stop wasting your potential on things that don't matter. That's the seventh truth. To reach your true potential, you must find a connection to the infinite. It will humble you, strengthen you, and guide you. And when you remember that you are part of something larger, your life begins to rise to meet the greatness you were built for. 8. Make time for deep reflections. If you want to realize your true potential, you need to create space in your life to actually hear yourself. Not the world, not the noise, not the expectations, not the pressure, yourself. Because the truth is, most people are moving so fast, distracting themselves so constantly, and living so loudly that they never stop long enough to understand who they are becoming. Deep reflection is rare today, not because it's difficult, but because we're afraid of what we might discover when the noise stops. Silence reveals truth, and truth demands action. That's why people keep themselves busy. It's easier to stay distracted than to face the parts of your life that need to change. But here's the thing, without reflection, you will repeat the same mistakes, follow the same patterns, and live the same year over and over again. You can't grow when you don't pause. You can't change when you never think. And you can't realize your potential if you never question your own life. The Stoics made reflection a daily habit. Seneca advised ending each day by asking, "What did I do well? What did I do poorly? What still needs improvement?" Not to judge themselves, not to punish themselves, but to gain clarity. Because reflection is not about guilt, it's about awareness. Deep reflection gives you 3 gifts that nothing else can. First, it gives you direction. When you slow down long enough to actually think, you start seeing what matters and what doesn't. You realize which goals are real and which ones are just noise. You understand what fuels you and what drains you. Without reflection, life pushes you around like a leaf in the wind. With reflection, you begin to steer. Second, it gives you insight. Reflection allows you to connect dots you never noticed before. Why you react a certain way, why you avoid certain challenges, why you stay stuck in certain patterns. Most people walk through life unaware of their own inner script. Reflection exposes that script so you can rewrite it. Third, it gives you power. Because when you know yourself deeply, your habits, your fears, your strengths, your weaknesses, you stop being controlled by them. You start acting with intention. You stop operating on autopilot. And that's when your potential begins to rise. But here's the important part. Reflection doesn't happen automatically. You have to create space for it. You have to slow down. You have to be willing to sit with your thoughts, even when they're uncomfortable. Reflection can look different for everyone. Maybe you journal at night, pouring your mind onto paper to see what's hiding beneath the surface. Maybe you sit in silence for 10 minutes. No phone, no music, just breathing and listening. Maybe you take long walks, letting your thoughts organize themselves naturally. Maybe you reflect once a week, reviewing your choices, your habits, your progress. Whatever method you choose, the point is the same. Give your mind space. Give your soul a chance to speak. Give your life the attention it deserves. The modern world has made reflection feel like a luxury, but it's a necessity. If you never pause, you'll never realize how far off track you might be drifting. If you never think deeply, you'll never understand why certain parts of your life feel wrong. If you never look inward, you'll always chase answers outward. Most people are scared of reflection because they're scared of responsibility. It's easier to blame circumstances, people, or luck than to admit your life could be different if you were willing to face the truth. But here's the reality. Reflection doesn't burden you. It frees you. It gives you clarity, direction, and power to act. Your potential doesn't reveal itself to a distracted mind. It reveals itself to a mind that listens, observes, questions, and grows. Every breakthrough you've ever had, every insight, every moment of clarity came from reflection, not chaos. So make time for it, protect it, treat it as sacred, because deep reflection is not just a habit, it's a doorway, and on the other side of that doorway is the person you want to become. That's the eighth truth. If you want to reach your true potential, you must make time for deep reflections. You must create silence in a world built on noise, because only in silence can you hear the call of the person you're meant to be. At the end of the day, realizing your true potential isn't about being perfect. It's not about having the right background or the right opportunities or the right timing. It's about choosing every single day to become a little more of who you were meant to be. It starts with refusing to let others define you, with listening to the passions that pull at your soul, with focusing on the person you want to become instead of the person you've been taught to be. It requires giving up the addictions that numb your mind and being brutally honest about what you can and can't do right now. It demands the courage to turn weaknesses into strengths, the humility to connect yourself to something bigger than your own fears, and the discipline to pause long enough to reflect deeply on your life. Your potential isn't hidden out in the world somewhere. It's inside you already, waiting for you to remove the noise, the lies, the excuses, and the limitations that have been covering it for years. The more you step into honesty, discipline, and reflection, the more that potential stops feeling like a dream and starts becoming your reality. And here's the part most people forget. No one is coming to unlock your potential for you. No one is coming to save you. But that's the power. You don't need them to. Everything you need to rise is already in your hands. You just have to choose to use it. So if this message hit you even a little, tap like, share this episode, and subscribe for more, because together we're building a life with intention, one honest step at a time.